Tonight on the program, we explore the prospects of Thailand's medical tourism after the COVID-19 pandemic. An interview with a human rights lawyer on the struggles that domestic violence survivors still endure. And a music producer who is behind a number of successful singles and music scores, including Mulan. สวัสดีค่ะ I'm Nabunag and welcome to This Week with Thai PBS World. Thailand has always been aiming to become the medical hub of the Southeast Asia region, especially with its high-quality medical services and its unique hospitality. Although it has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic like other industries, the government seems to be very optimistic about its growth. So according to Nikkei Asia, Thailand earned up to 59 billion baht in 2019, which amounted to 3% of all revenue from foreign tourism and was increasing every single year. Although no medical tourism revenue was reported in the past couple of years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, government authorities such as the Tourism Authority of Thailand are still confident in the country's potential for medical tourism, setting a proactive promotion plan and targeting revenue growth of 5% in 2022. So that's just next year. Thailand still has the potential to become leaders in the medical tourism as the country has 64 hospitals that meet the Joint Commission International Accreditation Standards, which is the highest number in the ASEAN region and also the fourth most in the world. On the other hand, some financial institutions don't think the same. According to Kasikor Research Center's report released back in July, the medical tourism market in Thailand for this year will still be declining, with the number of medical tourist arrivals amounting to around 10 to 20,000, or decreasing not less than 90% year on year. So the speed of recovery for the market will heavily depend on the COVID-19 management and the efficiency of nationwide vaccination programs. And if the third wave of COVID-19 can be resolved by the end of this year, medical tourists may gradually return to Thailand. Under these circumstances, medical tourist arrivals are expected to be around 130,000 to 180,000 next year. And the majority of medical tourists will likely be existing patients from the Middle East, Myanmar, and China who have previously received treatment or health checks at Thai private hospitals. And on this topic, I had a chance to talk to Dr. Jira Thawonpradit, who's from BDMS Wellness Clinic, and it is one of the biggest medical conglomerates in Thailand, on what she thinks about the future of medical tourism. So Dr. Jira told us that medical tourism in Thailand has been widely recognized internationally, especially for the quality of medical services that are up to standard, as well as hospitality and the overall costs that are not too high compared to other countries. She also has hopes that the medical tourism in Thailand will revive, especially after the country's reopening. But another trend that we'll be able to see after the pandemic, apart from medical tourism, is wellness tourism. Not only because people are more aware of their health, but it is also related to the changes in demographics, as Thailand entered the aging society with more than 20% of the population who are above 60 years old, and the number of deaths from non-communicable diseases that are constantly increasing.
หลังจากเปิดประเทศในช่วงนี้เองเราน่าจะเห็นเทรนด์หรือทิศทางการดูแลสุขภาพในการท่องเที่ยวเชิงสร้างเสริมสุขภาพหรือที่เราเรียกว่า wellness tourism มากขึ้นนะคะคำว่า wellness tourism เนี่ยคือกลุ่มเป้าหมายหรือกลุ่มลูกค้าที่เข้ามาตรงนี้เองเนี่ยจะแตกต่างกับ medical tourism ที่ว่า medical tourism คือตั้งใจที่จะเข้ามารับการรักษานะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นกลุ่มของ NCD กลุ่มโรคไม่ติดต่อเรื้อรังกลุ่มมะเร็งแต่ในกลุ่มของ wellness tourism tourism เนี่ยคือเป็นกลุ่มที่มีสุขภาพดีแต่เขาเริ่มมองหาค่ะว่าการท่องเที่ยวแบบไหนที่เขาสามารถทำให้สุขภาพดีขึ้นด้วยในเรื่องของ wellness tourism ต้องใช้หลายภาคส่วนร่วมกันนะคะหลายภาคส่วนร่วมกันคือไม่ใช่แต่เพียงแต่ของทาง medical หรือทีมทางการแพทย์อย่างเดียว
Meanwhile, the director of the International Marketing Division of Yanhee Hospital firmly believes that there will be two significant changes for Thailand's medical tourism after COVID-19, especially after the country's reopening. One of these significant changes is the quality of patients that will be coming into Thailand in the near future.
There are two things that will change after the pandemic. In fact, it's starting right now because Thailand has opened already. The first change is the change in number of patients. It will change quantitatively. Of course, the change will be slow and gradual as people become more comfortable in embarking on trips going abroad, and as people, the fear and the apprehension will disappear from people's minds. This is a gradual change. The number of patients will increase. Yes, they will increase, definitely, most definitely. But there's a second change that is more interesting and in fact more profound than the first one. And this is on the quality of patients who will be coming here to Thailand. Perhaps the backpackers will not be able to come this time. As we probably know, airline tickets are very expensive nowadays. And in addition to that, there are requirements that would be expensive for tourists, for them to be able to come. I think the greater change, the more profound change will be in the quality. Perhaps only a few patients will be able to come. But these are the patients who would pay huge amounts of money for the procedures that they would want to have in Thailand.
And now let's talk about this topic. When we think of cosmetic surgery, the first country that you would think of would be South Korea, right? But Thailand actually got the name for being the world's capital of sex change surgery. And to be honest, we got this title for decades already. But how? Let's find out more in this report.
Jessica Cuco, 30 years old, a taxi driver from Brazil, has believed she'd been born in the wrong body since she was 2 years old. It took her 6 years to do the research before coming to Thailand for the very first time to undergo gender reassignment surgery.
And there's something here in Thailand that is very nice. The state government regulates this surgery. So this means doctors must follow certain procedures and certain regulations to do this surgery. Like in my country, any plastic surgeon can do the surgery in any way he likes. So it doesn't give you any security, because then the guy can just do whatever he thinks is right. It might not be right. And then what am I going to do? Because certain things you can't just fix.
For Jessica and many other transgenders who travel across the world for sex change surgery in Thailand, it's about a sense of security. They all believe in Thai surgeons' abilities and skills. Dr. Burin Wangchiraniran, a plastic surgeon, has performed sex reassignment surgery, or SRS, on nearly 3,000 males and females over the past 20 years.
แต่ผ่าตัดแปลงเพศเนี่ยแทบไม่ได้ใช้เครื่องมืออะไรใหม่ๆเลยมันจะเป็นทักษะของฝีมือแล้วก็การตัดสินใจแล้วก็อีกอันหนึ่งที่เกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องการผ่าตัดศัลยกรรมตกแต่งก็คือการดีไซน์นะเพราะว่ามันจะแตกต่างจากหมอผ่าตัดแบบประเภทอื่นๆตรงเรื่องของการผ่าตัดแบบศัลยกรรมตกแต่งเนี่ยมันจะมีดีไซน์ก็คือว่าเราจะเลือกรูปแบบยังไงให้คนไข้ตามความเหมาะสม
Asked what the most challenging aspect of SRS is, he said, it's the patient's expectations.
เราจะต้องอธิบายให้คนไข้เข้าใจว่าการผ่าตัดเนี่ยมันมีทั้งด้านที่ประสบความสำเร็จและด้านที่อาจจะไม่ประสบความสำเร็จเท่าไหร่นะการมีประสบการณ์ทางด้านการผ่าตัดเนี่ยก็จะทำให้ผลของการผ่าตัดเนี่ยดีกว่าคนที่ไม่มีประสบการณ์
The cost of SRS in Thailand is between 300,000 and 500,000 baht, a lot cheaper than countries in Europe and the US, where it can be as high as $1 million baht. This transgender surgery consultant gets clients via her social media and website, but 50% of her foreign clients find her through word of mouth.
Section surgery for someone is considered as an emergency. You know that you can go on with your life without this surgery. So they are very determined to have the surgery done. Last year, 50% of my clients prefer to wait until the travel restrictions are lifted. And then, so next year, reopening of Thailand, right? So I expect to have more clients, like 30 to 50%. So new clients plus the clients from the 2020 that did not come, they have to come.
To retain Thailand's outstanding reputation as a destination for sex change surgery, Dr. Prisha Teodranon, the pioneer in this field, suggests that we should maintain our healthcare standards.
ประเทศไทยที่จะต้องทำก็คือต้องรักษาชื่อเสียงเอาไว้ให้ดี โดยเฉพาะมาตรฐานในการดูแลคนไข้ อาจจะต้องให้องค์กรเช่นแพทยสภานะฮะหรือองค์กรสมาคมวิชาชีพของแพทย์แต่ละสาขาเนี่ยควรจะเป็นผู้ที่เซอร์ติฟายให้รู้ว่าคุณเข้ามาที่นี่เนี่ยคุณได้มาตรฐาน
We just had to listen to the doctors about their views on the future of medical tourism. This time round, let's have a listen to the expats in Thailand about the impressions on the medical services in the country, as well as whether Thailand deserves to be called the medical hub in Southeast Asia.
It's not walking distance to SkyTrain.
What do you do? Because you're now retired?
I play a lot of tennis.
Alan Jenkins moved to Thailand 6 years ago after retiring from his interior design career in China. As a senior, Mr. Jenkins has extensive experience of Thai medical services. Actually, his history with Thai hospitals goes back years. When he was still in Shanghai in 2001, he still opted to see a doctor in Thailand.
I had been not well in China and I was due for a vacation. And so a friend of mine said, add a couple of days at the beginning to see a physician. So I just came in and started that way. The doctor saw me, asked me some questions, and I still see that doctor today.
Though Thailand ranks low for English proficiency, Mr. Jenkins said he has not encountered such a problem. It has been quite the opposite.
Their level of English, they're physicians, but a lot of them were trained in Australia or North America, and I think there's a comfort factor for Farang to have a good English speaker when it comes to medical issues.
It can be frustrating having to get medical attention, let alone doing it in a foreign country. Still, Mr. Jenkins so far has had impressive experiences in Thailand.
Everybody seems to be very supportive. And the physicians and the nurses are very professional. The hospitals are very clean, and actually some of them are quite elegant. They almost look like a 5-star hotel. But I think it's in the care that you receive and also the follow-up. We would come down once or twice a year easily, and you got the same doctor and he or she knew your file.
Having been in Shanghai for 14 years before his retirement, Mr. Jenkins views life to be more challenging there. The language was obviously one thing, but it was also the number of the people in the hospital.
China has just so many people. And foreigners, yes, we had different clinics, but if there was an emergency, you were taken to a Chinese hospital. And I did have an emergency once with it was a kidney stone, and I got taken to a local Chinese hospital in emergency, and I would never want to do that again.
In his home country of Canada, Mr. Jenkins said taxpayers have the right to full medical care. In Thailand, of course, he has to cover his own medical expenses. It remains more appealing, however, considering it's so much easier to access the service.
How do you do? Because I go to play tennis, so there's always. Because as a farang, I have to have my own medical package, and I can choose to go where I wish. In Canada, it's also very good. There can be waiting lines if it's not an emergency. The system here, I mean, gosh, you could call up right now and be in 45 minutes, you know. And I know friends of mine in Canada have had to wait for an MRI for a few weeks. Some in the United States have had to wait for months.
Some common complaints about getting medical treatment in Thailand include the double pricing system, where non-Thais get charged extra for the same service. Thai PBS World checked a hospital website and its service menu and found that to be true, but Mr. Jenkins said he has had no such experience. The challenge lies more in dealing with insurance companies.
No, I've never noticed that I was charged differently than somebody else, a Thai national, no. I think the only complaint that I have and my friends have is sometimes there seems to be a disconnect between once you're finished with the doctor and the nurse and you go to pay. And your payment and your insurance coverage never seems to, often doesn't match.
As Thailand aspires to become a medical hub and promotes medical tourism, Mr. Jenkins did not hesitate for 1 second to say the country definitely has the potential.
Well, I think it speaks for itself. I mean, nobody else is going to any of the surrounding countries. And a lot of the expats, but also a lot of other Southeast Asian nationals are coming here. So it says something for the quality of the healthcare here. You go to some of the hospitals and there's a lot of foreign nationals. So I guess from my small perspective, just visually who I'm seeing in the hospitals speaks to the quality that, you know, people are receiving.
Shalalak Danwanpin reporting for Thai PBS World.
Very interesting views right here. And now let's look at the other stories in our weekly roundup.
The CCSA has announced that the nationwide state of emergency is to be extended again until January 31st. The nighttime curfew is to be revoked from December 1st as the dark red zone COVID classification is being removed. Nightclubs and pubs are still set to reopen on January 16th, but could be sooner if the situation improves. People arriving in Thailand in the Sandbox program who must be fully vaccinated will only be required to stay within the initial province for 5 days from December 16th onwards. And from December 1st, international arrivals under the Test and Go and Sandbox schemes will be subject to rapid antigen tests, which take less time instead of RT-PCR tests. Thailand's Duran Pokapan or CP Group and Norway's Telenor Group jointly announced an equal partnership for a joint venture, a potential merger that is not yet named, with a focus on tech startup investment earlier this week. The news came after rumors swirling over the past couple of weeks about the merger between the two telecom giants, True and DTAC, or a takeover. It has also been met with concerns about its impact on the customers and the balance shift in the market. The Thai government has signed purchase contracts of 30 million more doses of the Pfizer vaccine and 50,000 courses of the Molnupiravir antiviral drug. According to Public Health Minister Anutin Chanvirakul, the first batch of the newly bought vaccine is expected to be delivered in the first quarter of next year and will be administered as booster shots. If approved by the Thai FDA, the additional vaccine will also be administered next year to about 5 million children aged 5 to 11. The Molnupiravir deal will cost a total of 500 million baht.
And now it's time for our weekly columns where we will begin with Empowering Thai Women, where I had a chance to talk to Butsiapa Sompong, who's a human rights lawyer as well as the founder of Shiro. She will be talking about the current struggles that domestic violence survivors are still facing, as well as the root causes of all of these problems.
Every time when you say something against the status quo, every time when you call out against the abuse of power, you're gonna get backlash. Sometimes it feels discouraging. It feels like, what did I do wrong? And it feels like I feel bad for all the other women and LGBTIQ community. Every time they're trying to speak up against the violation, they're trying to, demand their rights which they should have. The kind of people who really want to maintain the status quo, they're like trying to throw a lot of backlash and trying to, push us back and trying to make us feel small.
Busiapha Sompong is one of a few women in Thailand who is not afraid to tell her own story of being a domestic violence survivor. As a human rights lawyer and the founder of Shiro, a non-profit organization which aims to eliminate domestic abuse in Thailand, Busiapha's determination is to denormalize violence, particularly against women, children, and the LGBT community. Most importantly, she also wants to empower survivors to become advocates of their own.
So I have to admit that when I just started Shiro, it's like the way of healing myself by reach out to others. But then it's almost as if like I was trying to survive. Because it's actually a traumatic experience. Anyone, regardless of what gender, can be a change maker, can stand up for something. So it's not just he, isn't it? It can be she, or it can be, LGBTIQN community to do that.
Busiapha pointed out that the existing protection system is dysfunctional and unsupportive of victims of domestic and gender-based violence. Many of the victims often feel isolated, especially when going through the justice system, where nobody understands the sensitivity nor the complexity of the issue.
I always feel kind of isolated, sometimes going through a police station, going to the court. When experienced law enforcement who doesn't understand how sensitive, how there's a power imbalance between, survivor and abuser, it's almost like we have to keep explaining again and again to everyone. I think the big challenge is that how can we change the whole dysfunctional structure? Why don't change the system and policy instead of letting, isolating and stigmatize people who need help?
Busiapha believes that patriarchy is the root cause of all social problems, including gender-based violence and victim blaming.
As a woman, since you were born, you are told to feel small, you are told to be a lady, you are told not to talk too much, to behave yourself, to be modest and everything, to be naive, essentially tell you to be stupid. So many systemic barriers that are trying to push you down and ask you to be quiet. That's why most people choose not to speak, because they know that there are so many victim blaming attitudes out there.
Also believes that everyone can empower each other to fight against domestic violence and make positive changes in society.
Once when you are empowered as a woman, or regardless of what gender, you will always be able to empower other people. So there's different steps you can start from, recognize your self-worth, trying to connect with people who are supporting you, and then recognize the barriers. If you are someone who experiences emotional abuse, verbal abuse, or even physical abuse, you have every right to stand up for yourself, and it's not your fault. I believe that you have the power within yourself. I believe that you are amazing, individual.
And in this episode of Home Away, we had a chance to talk to Chris Krager, who's behind many music scores, behind many films such as Mulan, including many popular singles for famous artists. And guess what? All of these are recorded in his studio in Chonburi province.
Many people are familiar with award-winning and blockbuster film, but not many people know that some of the musical scores were produced in Chonburi, Thailand. The film scores were partially produced by Chris Craker from Karma Studios, a record complex in Bang Sare in Chonburi, and they are not the only projects. Chris has also helped to produce much more music for artists around the world and in Thailand, including some compositions of His Majesty the late King Bhumibol. Actually making music for His Majesty the King was what brought him to Thailand in the first place.
35 years ago, I got a fax sent to me when I was recording in Abbey Road Studios, and it was a request for me to come to Bangkok to meet Momluang Asani Pramod and talk about recording the music of His Majesty the King, Rama IX.
At that time, Chris admitted he didn't quite understand the significance of that request, but he flew over from home in England anyway.
But I started work on that first project with the Bangkok Symphony Orchestra, and that was the start of my love affair of coming to Thailand and working. And I was very lucky thereafter then to work with the Bangkok Symphony Orchestra a lot, actually, with more of His Majesty the King's music.
Chris was working in many places, his home in England and other countries in Europe and in America. Thailand was one country which the music producer visited often.
I really loved the warmth of the people that I was working with. Everybody was very kind to me and very respectful. It was very different from working in the West, in America and the UK. So there was a certain process of getting to know a new culture and a new style of working with people. Secondly, I absolutely love Thai food, and it's my favorite cuisine, still to this day. And so we're very lucky here to have brilliant Thai food every day, and that was a big thing. I like the climate here much better than living in the West.
Chonburi, in Chris's words, is such a special place, great for both work and leisure. Artists visiting to work with him all love it here.
I'd always had a dream to build my own recording studio, and I needed to do that somewhere special and somewhere peaceful. And I just thought somewhere near the beach down here in Chonburi would be very nice, and it's turned out to be exactly that. It's like a tropical oasis for artists from all over the world who come here and know that they're somewhere special and not in a normal city studio setting.
Some artists come and play at the studio complex, but some work. Chris said he also does remotely. Thanks to today's technology, he's been able to work from Chonburi, and everything can sync perfectly. Throughout the 12 years of its existence, many pieces of music has been produced here, from successful Thai artists to UK rock band. One of these is China's top female star, whose single has become the biggest selling single of all time. She recorded that successful single here at Karma Studio.
I put all of my heart into building this place, and so we did that with the very best intention, and now beautiful things are coming back to us.
Chalalak Janwanpen reporting for Thai PBS World.
And that is definitely amazing. And we'll be leaving you tonight with drone footages of sharks in Trang province. And that wraps up tonight's edition of This Week with Thai PBS World. Join us every Friday at 10:15 p.m. only on Thai PBS. And also don't forget to follow us on social media as well as our website thaipbsworld.com for all the latest updates as well as analyses. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you next Friday. สวัสดีค่ะ